Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I wanted to talk to Katy Hall. I wanted to talk about the Equal Opportunities Initiatives Bill, or what some call the anti-DEI bill, and just clarify some questions that you might have or that anyone might have about the bill. So, welcome, Katy. I should have said
Hi.
Representative Hall.
All good. You can call me Katie. Thanks for having me. I
Oh,
appreciate
I'm so glad. I think that it's really important that we have honest conversations and talk about what's really going on
it.
versus what people say.
I agree.
So how did it all start? Or do you want to explain the bill itself?
Boy, yeah. Well, I guess I could say, well, it started last year. It started when I first got elected and when I was like starting to look at kind of what legislation I wanted to run. And what happened was as I was kind of going through things that I was thinking about running, I had talked to some constituents whose kids had been asked to fill out DEI commitment statements in their applications for like medical school, dental school, law school. They had to fill out, as part of the application, they had to fill out a commitment to DEI and what they have done to further DEI throughout their high school and college careers. And and I just thought, why are we asking these such politically charged questions to people that are just applying for school, right? And so as I kind of talked to leadership in the House about that, I said, I'm really want to kind of dive into what's happening here. They said, actually, somebody had started a bill. It was actually Brad Wilson. It was Speaker Wilson who had started a bill, um, already opened a bill file for one dealing with the same kind of questions happening with university professors. And so they said, well, why don't you just combine that and we'll let you run with it. I was fully expecting it to pass in the Senate and it didn't. And so anyway, what happened was it gave me an opportunity to have more conversations in the interim, which was great. I had a lot of professors reach out to me after that bill didn't pass and they said, you're on the right track. This is what we're noticing. Please keep going with this. And so I just kind of kept those conversations going. And then in the meantime, I had more conversations with Jamie Renda's group, Path Forward Utah, and all of the people that she's engaged, including you. And we had those conversations with Bob Woodson over the whole summer. And all of these things were kind of just leading to developing this bill and kind of where we wanted to go with it. The more we were hearing from people and from professors and from students and from citizens saying, we want this stuff out. Like what's going on is discrimination to try to solve discrimination, and it's not working. It's causing a further divide in our state, in our schools, in our country. And as I talked to the professors, because they're afraid for their jobs. Honestly, they were really afraid for their jobs, and so I finally just said, "Hey, in developing this bill, I would love it if I could meet with you guys." And so I met with them. I actually took Cari Lisenby down with me, Representative Lisenby, and we met with some of these professors. I went down there thinking these are going to be the last few conservatives left on campus, right? And it wasn't. We kept hearing from them like, listen, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal. I believe in social justice, but what's been happening with this is not that. It's not that. And it has shut down conversation on campus. It's shut down viewpoint diversity. There is none of that. And they said, we need help. Like we need something to happen. And so that's a long story, I know, but that's the real genesis of the bill itself. And then just as we started having the conversations and kind of talked with, you know, other legislators and our policy analysts, and this is what we came up with. And I'm actually really proud of what we came up with.
I want to go all the way backwards to people who have no idea what DEI is. Can
Yeah.
you explain both what it's supposed to be, what it's ideally is, and what you see it as being.
Right, right. Well, again, I think so. It stands for diversity, equity, inclusion. And I want to say that I think that there are some people who really do believe in those tenets, right? And and I think it comes from a good place, these liberal professors. They really believe that we should be helping create more diverse campuses and more equitable campuses and inclusive campuses. And I can't argue with that. I just argue with the way it's being done a lot. And you've done more research on like the actual, like where it's come from and why it's come. I believe what it is it's a lot of these theories and quite frankly opinions of people who have developed and studied these theories. And it's more opinions than
We have to
anything.
use we have to use studied very, very loosely.
Right.
Oftentimes it's created in a room, probably
Right.
with the assistance of, yeah, herbs.
Maybe so. And maybe so. And the problem is that again, they are theories and opinions that are then being put into practice in real time, in
Right.
real life at the campuses. And that's again what these professors talked to us about was that these things would just happen and it would be like, oh, this is what we're doing. And they would go to question and say, oh, but why? And then they were like, you can't question that. This is what we're doing. Like if you're questioning this, you're racist or you're against diversity, you're phobic of,
Right.
anything that was pushed was just like, this is what we're doing. And it was like they were afraid to push back because then they would get written up, they would get censured, they would get this and that. And so it just they described it as kind of a modern day McCarthyism where they just felt like they couldn't even speak, they couldn't even say anything, and they'd just go along with whatever. And then they've also seen real harms in their students as far as like they're just not learning and progressing. One of the professors was like, he was actually a dance professor, and he was like, I feel like my students are in this. He's like, there's a dance term called the kitsch, and it's where you're not progressing, you're not moving. And he says, I feel like the students at in that I'm seeing and dealing with are in this intellectual kitsch. They're just not moving. They're not progressing. And also we're kind of creating activists that are not happy, that are not leading fulfilling lives. They actually were very concerned about not only themselves and their jobs, but their students and what they're actually.
It's unhealthy. What I saw was infantilizing.
Mm,
I saw 18 to 24-year-olds that only responded to emotion. There was no
mm,
logic. I know in the experience that I had when I went to Weber State and the kids
oh,
could not listen, I just saw kind of otherworldly because I just thinking thinking as somebody who's got a kid who will eventually be going to, college or higher something, right? I just thought, why
yeah,
would I spend money to send my kid to go someplace where they're not flourishing?
right. Exactly. Yeah. And we're
Where
spending taxpayer money on the promotion of these things as
right,
well. When we compared the costs of, just say at the University of Utah, we compared the costs of the full-time employees for DEI offices. I think there's like 53 full-time employees. And then in the student resources, the general student for all students was like 101 full-time employees, and the cost was only a few $1,000s difference. And so it was like, whoa, what's going on? And people are like, oh, that's not that much money in the grand scheme of it all. And I'm like, yeah, that's just scratches the surface though too. We didn't do a deep dive into all of the money that's spent. I had somebody actually send me a letter this last week about all of the money that is spent on food for the events for that the DEI offices to put together down at, and this was at UVU. They're like, you don't even know how many tens of thousands of dollars are spent on food just to attract students to come to these events. And then they can say, oh, everybody's coming to these events. Well, they're coming for the food. I get letters every week from
And
people.
some of the letters you get, I mean, you do get hate mail.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I get some. And it's
What gave you the courage to bring this bill up as a brand new representative?
I guess can't, I just don't like it when wrong things are happening, And so I just feel like if you're principled and you know what you believe and what you can stand for, then just stand for it. I don't care if people email me and throw shade and hate. It's like, oh well, that's
Well,
I
and the
think
shade that they throw, quite frankly, is that you're racist.
oh yeah, yeah. And that I just want white supremacy everywhere. And I just think, have a conversation with me. Let's talk. I think the sad part is that we actually really, I think we all went, and I would say this is in America, I don't know that necessarily other countries are this way, but I think in America, we really do have a lot of the same values. Like we value the same thing. And if you're being honest with yourself, I think diversity is important. But I think you also have to have diversity of opinion, a diversity of thought, diversity of religion. There's diversity doesn't just mean outward appearance, right? And I think equality of opportunity is super important. I don't believe in equality of outcomes. I don't think you can make, well, the only one that can make equal outcomes is God. Sorry. I just, that's not our job here. Our job is to make things as fair as we can and give people the chance to rise up and grow. And I absolutely believe in inclusion, but I don't believe in inclusion at the expense of exclusion. We need to be inclusive, but we can't do it with excluding everyone else, excluding people as well. And so I think there is more that unites us than divides us. And what's been happening with DEI and the sharp increase of the programs and the theories and the opinions and everything that's gone on has done more to divide us than anything else. And we're letting it happen because of the politics of it, right? We're letting it happen because of the politics of it. And we've got to stop. We've got to have all the conversations. That's why when people will ask me, if I have people that write me hate mail, if they'll ask me in order to have knowledge, in order to really truly understand, I will write them back and say, listen, we may disagree on this. We totally may disagree, but this is why I brought this forward. This is what I believe. And you can still not agree with me, but I think it's important to have the conversations. And I'm okay with having those conversations as long as people really want to try to understand and they don't just want to hate.
Right. I'm wondering if the politics, I see two parts in the politics. The first one is fear. I think that there are a lot of people who would do the right thing, but they are afraid that they're going to lose their livelihood, that they're going to lose their reputation. I was just listening to something and they quoted Ayn Rand and they said, I'm far too much of a coward to be to not be brave. But it was something along the lines of I'm way too afraid to be a coward, I think is how it works. And I think that is the driving force for many of us, because I don't think anybody who's out here doing this wants people to hate them. Nobody signs up and says that sounds fun. Let's spend our days being hated by people, mocked and whatever. It's fear, but also money. It seems like there's a lot of money and a lot of power and a lot of what I think about these are like luxury politics. And what's sad to me is there was just a KSL article and it showed immigrants and it said why diversity, equity, inclusion shouldn't be a bad word. And I'm watching these brand new immigrants become naturalized. And I just thought, you came here for a reason. You dedicated yourself to this country for a reason. but now you're going to make this country look a whole lot like what you left.
I think part of the problem with that is I don't know that those naturalized citizens, I mean, my hope is that even if they're hearing that, they're just like, whatever.
Me
That's
too.
your hope.
Me too.
Because, but the bad part is that you're letting someone speak to them that's already putting that in their heads. That's maddening to me.
Right.
And it's also maddening that's, I mean, I wish that the author of that article hadn't focused on that. That was
Right.
probably one little part of the whole ceremony and the whole speech. And that's what they chose to focus on. That's the part. And I think our media has so much of a part to play in this. And it's
Yes.
a negative part. It's a negative part because that gets the clicks and the hits on the article, right? If you're just saying, oh, this was a great ceremony with naturalized citizens and they're so happy to be citizens of America now, that's not going to get all the clicks and stuff. But if you put that DEI, like these aren't bad words and we're telling, then that's going to get clicks. And that is really, really upsetting because it's such a negative tone to everything right now. And I think that's part of what's feeding into everybody's negativity right now.
Well, I'm wondering if it's ignorance or if it's malice. And I tend to think that it's ignorance. I tend to think that so many people look at the top level and they say, oh, diversity sounds wonderful. Of course, we want diversity. Equity, well, isn't that just equality? It's just another word for equality. And inclusion, of course, we don't want to be hateful. We don't want to bully anyone. So, or exclude anyone. So, of course, inclusion. And they don't recognize that its roots are far more nefarious
Right.
than what we get. So, one of the examples that I use is that when we were giving testimony about the bill, there were
Mhm.
people who they are known for being the people who push the racist narrative or et cetera, right? And they sat in the back room and they just made racist comments about every single one of us because diversity,
Mhm.
we were all the same color as them. When it's people saying that they want diversity, they want to root out racism, but they're being racist themselves. I'm very concerned about those people teaching our kids.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a business. So, okay, tell me what the bill did.
So the bill, we called it equal opportunity initiatives because something everybody can get behind, right? Is equal opportunity for things. That's the complaint, right? Is that there's not African Americans or Hispanics or those they're underrepresented because they don't have the opportunity to get there. And we're saying everyone has the opportunity to get there, and everyone should have opportunity to access help if they need it to be successful in school, right? It shouldn't be discriminatory based on what you look like or what you identify as. It should be based on need. It should be based on are you at risk of not completing, whether that's because you have English as a second language, you have a disability, you're in the military family, you just come from a poor socioeconomic status, like anything, anyone should have help. So part of the bill, a big part of the bill is that we're saying we want these offices that have been generally used as diversity, equity, inclusion offices. We want them to change to a student success office where anyone can get help that needs it. So that's one of the biggest parts of the bill. The other bigger part too is that what we did is we didn't say this is what diversity, equity, inclusion is, and then we're banning that. We said these are some tenets of what diversity, equity, inclusion has been teaching, has these theories. These are the practices that we're seeing. And we say these are discriminatory practices and they are prohibited now. And so we can't just have people that will go and then change the name of whatever office or change the name of whatever theory they're doing, intersectionality or DEI. And then we've said that these are discriminatory practices. We highlight what each of those are.
And what are
And
they?
then we go, here's some examples of the prohibited discriminatory practices. So anything that promotes a differential treatment of an individual without an important governmental interest, which we defined as, and then we made this one caveat of governmental interest, was relating to athletic competition or athletic safety or in public education or privacy. So that has to do with like differentiating men's and women's bathrooms and men and women's sports, right? So no promotional, you can't promote the differential treatment of an individual based on their personal identity characteristics or sex or gender identity, national origin. And then like another one, influences the employment decisions of an individual other than through the use of neutral hiring process with regard to personal identity characteristics and in accordance with federal law. Influences the individual's admission to, advancement in, or graduation from an institution in the public education system or an academic program. Influences the individual's participation in an institution-sponsored public education system sponsored program. It also means engaging in a policy, procedure, practice, program, office, initiative, or required training that asserts that one person's personal identity characteristic is inherently superior or inferior to another personal identity characteristic. It's basically don't discriminate. Don't promote discrimination. Don't advance someone just because of what they look like, white, black, male, female, whatever, and don't discriminate against them.
So if you have people who already have these jobs and they already believe the ideology, they already feel that they are best to help their people, their tribe. How then do you monitor and see if things are changing? Because I think that once you believe this ideology, it's very hard for you to then go, oh, I'm going to serve all people equally.
Right. It's very true. And this stuff didn't happen overnight, right? It didn't happen overnight. It's taken years for this to just ramp up to this point of, and so if we think it's going to go away overnight, we're up in the night. It's not going to go away overnight. We're going to have to change that culture back to just stop discriminating against anyone. Stop being hateful and saying whiteness is bad and reading is whiteness or math is whiteness. And I mean, that's the kind of thing that needs to stop. And it's going to take, unfortunately, it's still going to take a while, right? And so what the bill does is we're giving each institution until July 1st and public ed and government offices, by the way, until July 1st to take a look at all their programs, take a look at all those offices, take a look at what they're doing and make the adjustments, because they all have varying degrees of all of this, right? I think Snow College was the only one that doesn't have a lot of it going on right now. So they'll probably have the easiest time. But so we're letting each institution come July 1st. If people are seeing what things still happening or they have questions, they can report it. So we put reporting mechanisms into the bill so they can report to the higher ed board. And then for public ed, there's a school board reporting mechanism that's in there. And then as they get these reports, they have 30 days to identify if it's truly, an issue. And then if it is, then they have, I think we gave them 180 days to remedy it. It's not going to change overnight. We're not going to just say, no, this is out. And could we have done it? No, I don't think we could have.
No.
I don't think that passed.
Right.
And I don't think it would solve the problem that all of this is actually really trying to fix. I think by doing it this way, we're saying, no, there is still people that need help. And we still want to help people. We still want to have diversity. We want to have inclusion. We want to have equal opportunity. And we're going to do that with these offices that we want you to turn these into student success offices for everyone and teach people that people are not racist just because of their skin color or whatever, And then we'll just see. And then they'll report back to to the legislature in the interim, and then we will see and make adjustments next year if we have to make adjustments to the bill.
So I have a few questions on that. So the first one is, you said that it is public ed, so that counts for K-12. So do
Yeah.
you know much about social and emotional learning?
Yes, so I have heard of some districts who have employed that pretty hard. And they're gonna have to take, like I said, they're gonna have to, each district, and I'm sure the school board, well, I do know the school board has kind of set out, this is what HB 261 does. You guys need to take a look, the LEAs need to take a look at everything that's going on in your schools. I've been getting some reports from people right now, like, oh, they'll send me a screenshot. Look at this violates your bill. And I said, yeah, that looks like it probably does. I would let the school board know, let the school district know, let your local school district know, let the school know. And then if they don't do anything about it, then let the school district know, the board. But they have until July 1st to fix it. Look at those things, send them in, say, hey, I think this violates this, and so we need everyone to be on the lookout for it too. It's not
Right.
trying to change the culture back to a culture that is I don't even I hate to say go back to normal, but just to
Unified. Here's the
yes.
thing about diversity. Diversity is beautiful and it adds to the picture, except for when that diversity, what I say, becomes a bludgeon. Or I really am concerned about watching schools adopt affinity groups.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is a problem, because what they say is, oh, we're just learning about our cultures, we're just celebrating. But I know, because I talk to young people and they're saying, oh yeah, in our groups, they definitely tell us we're the best.
It feels like segregation, to be honest.
Absolutely.
It feels like we're making moves back to segregation. And it's like, wait a second.
Yes,
This kind of stuff I feel like has taken us about 50 steps backwards.
absolutely.
Where Martin Luther King's "I have a dream that my children will be," and we know the famous quote, right? And then I've heard, even in committee when we were presenting, I heard people say that were opposed to the bill that his dream is not a real reality, and because it's not, we have to do this. We have to discriminate. And I just want to say, wait a second, you
It's not a
cannot.
reality for the people who choose for it not to be, but for
Right.
many of us, and then we get shamed when we are like, you're my sister. Like, we're just human beings, and we can appreciate other people, and you don't have to have this hierarchy of oppression nonsense that is so damaging. Especially, I don't understand why everybody talks about progressive and being moving forward,
That's not,
while
it's moving backwards.
putting
It's
this
taking,
so far backwards. And there are people who honestly fantasize that white people will be in the place where they were a long time ago. And it's just like, what in the world's this is insane to
right.
me.
Like, what will that accomplish? Like, if it's
It will
just
pivot back.
about it's fair play, is that what we're going for? I thought we were going for everybody being kind to each other and treating each other as equals.
Right.
And that will not happen if this keeps happening. It will like the sure way to keep it from happening is to keep fomenting racism and discrimination.
Exactly. And I do think that sometimes I was talking to somebody and they had said, do you think that the people who sell this, who peddle this stuff, and this is how I see it. I see them as, you're like, if you're on I see them as the overseers on a plantation. The people who will treat their own people badly and make sure that they don't progress, make sure that they don't achieve. When they go to school, if they're only going to school to learn how to be activists, that only benefits the people at the top, because they're just water carriers. And so watching that and seeing the real harm, when people are, when they start school, they're going, I'm going to have a better life than what I started with. That's usually what people are thinking. I'm going to go to school and I'm going to have a better life. I'm going to set my goals and my aims. And then within not very long, by their sophomore year, so many of these kids are unrecognizable. That's painful to watch.
And I don't feel like it's bringing them fulfillment and happiness. And I think all of us in this world, like we take what we've been given, and yeah, some people are given more, some people are given less, some people are given more and then they have trials through their lives. But like the whole goal is to take what you've been given and make the most of it, and also use it as something that will help launch you. And I think what we're doing now is we're saying to kids, doesn't matter, you're this because of what you were born like, and there is nothing you can do about it. And so you should just sit and be depressed and get mad and take it to the man or take it to the whatever group that is oppressing you. You know what I mean? Instead of like, hey, we live in America, for heaven's sakes. You can do anything, you can accomplish anything you set your heart to because we live in this great country. And yeah, is it perfectly fair? No, nobody's ever said that it is, but that's what that's what gives you drive, that's what gives you purpose. And if somebody's just telling you it doesn't matter, whatever you were, because you were born Black or because you were Hispanic or because you're an immigrant or even because you're white, this is what you have. I just don't accept that. I don't
Well,
accept it.
I think it cripples and then it keeps people down. They never move out of that space. Clarify this for me, because this is what I tell people and I want to make sure I'm getting this right. The bill, the first thing that it does is says that anybody who needs help is going to get the help they need. Correct?
In higher, yeah, the higher ed campuses, they are
Okay.
instructed to have student success centers.
The second thing is that if they bring in speakers that are left leaning, they have to match that with someone who is on the more right side, or at least more, well, I'm just going to say more right, left and right. So
right. There is a specific line in there that says, you know, bringing in speakers
diversity
with
of thought,
viewpoint, diversity of thought.
yes.
Yep.
So, and then there was one that was, or was that the tie-in with the whole, we need to make sure that our kids are able to listen to different viewpoints? Is that part of the same thing? Like when I talk about going to the school and having all the kids protest, was that part of that where they need to be able to just be respectful, or can they still protest the way that they did before?
So part of the bill too says that they will annually train employees on the separation of personal political advocacy from an institution's business and employment activities.
Good.
And that they will develop strategies, including inviting speakers, to promote viewpoint diversity and establish policies and procedures to include opportunities for education and research on free speech and civic education.
Beautiful. So, and you can't take away programs that already existed, correct?
Meaning?
I know that this was the place where I call them the squad, where the squad dressed in their funeral gear and stood outside and said that they were being erased, that they were losing so much. It's what I saw, and I think that Utah desperately needs a new narrative. Desperately. You cannot just listen to that viewpoint. Most of the people that I talk to that are working class people, they don't even agree with that viewpoint, but they're the models of it. So, and what they were saying is that they were being erased, that they felt like they were invalidated, that were unheard. But I don't think there was anything in the bill that could really say that, because that's what I mean by nothing they had was taken away.
No, there's nothing in there. And even there was concern about, and there's concern on both sides of the argument about things like they have like a Black cultural center and I don't know if it's a Hispanic cultural center or something, like all campuses.
For high school, they've got Latinos in Action.
Yes, and Latinos in Action and all these things. And the bill specifically says, you know, as long as those things are not exclusionary, they're not outlawed in this bill, right? Now, looking at the website for some of those cultural centers, there's things that need to change. based
Right.
on the bill. Some of the things that they're targeting and highlighting and pushing, they probably need to change some of those things. And my hope is that it becomes sort of a, like somebody was saying, I think on one of the committees, they were saying, well, so if there's a Latinos in action, couldn't just all the white kids join Latinos in action and then force out all the, and I was like, first of all, what kind of world do you think we live in where people don't do that? Like, kids don't do that. They just want to hang out with their friends, and their friends are of all different cultures. And great. If Latinos in action, let's white kids in, black kids in, or if the Black Cultural Center, Dolores, she heads up the Black student union up at the moment. She has white kids in there, she has Hispanic kids in there.
Nothing wrong with learning about cultures. Like I said,
Oh,
unless you're
that's
teaching that yours is
beautiful.
superior.
That's a
So
beautiful thing that they're learning about other cultures. The problem is if you're being exclusionary or you're saying ours is the best and the only and the,
there's a
but
program called Becoming Visible,
mm,
and it takes kids that look like, just your average kid and puts them in their native gear and puts their pictures up on the walls. I have an issue with it called Becoming Visible because to me, one, it's telling the kid they weren't visible before. That's what I hear. And the second thing is that it's basically telling the other kids that you're not worthy of being as visible. The UEA's one of their biggest focuses is land acknowledgement. So then you draw those two together and you go, so this is something that should probably be, watched carefully. So
yeah. And honestly, and I do feel like I've talked with some of our presidents of some of the higher ed institutions, and I do feel like they're trying, and they've seen the issue. They see that there's been a problem, and I do believe they are trying to address it. And like I say, as the year goes on, we're going to have to take a look at it again at the end of the year and say, okay, what's been working, what hasn't, what is there things we need to change? Is there things we need to add to it? One of the big complaints that I've gotten from a lot of people is they're like, oh, there's this federal program that and we put in federal carve outs. We did that. Their institutions get a lot of money from the federal government. And it's unfortunate that the federal government would require some of these discriminatory practices. But if they do, then unfortunately, they'll have to present it to the board. We put a whole thing in there. If they do, they have to present it to the board and say why it's so needed and why it's necessary and what they have to do to fulfill the guidelines of whatever the federal thing is. But I mean, let's hope we get another new president in.
I always think we have to think locally, and I think that the solution is that at least if the kids see that there's alternatives and they see that there's concerns, then some of them are going to feel like they're a little bit protected. Because I know that there are students of every color who are going, I don't like this. And it's wonderful to have some people noticing what's going on. So I think that's wonderful. I have one last question for you, and that is, do you have an example? Because I don't think at the very beginning you talked about having to make medical pledges. What did those look like? I think it's important that people know what's in them.
What did those look? So it would be like an application would say, as part of your application, submit a 3-page essay on what you've done to further diversity, equity, inclusion, and how it will influence and impact your medical school career and what you can do to it's really frustrating just because it's like you have these kids that have worked their butts off to just qualify to apply to medical school, and then to feel like if they are not the right, if they're not hitting a diversity quota for some of the medical schools, then they're not going to get in.
And I sit there going, I don't want to go to a doctor who's made these pledges. I want my doctor to think first and foremost about my health, not about my race.
Yep.
Unless it has to do with, eyes and diabetes, because those.
And there is, the thing is, so I'm a nurse, my husband's a physician. We went to school 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, right? We learned about different races and different cultures and the health problems that they have that are, somewhat more prevalent in those. And that's a part of your learning. That's not anything new, but it's changed. That's not what's being taught now. It's focusing solely on those characteristics and ignoring everything else. In the Senate committee meeting, when one of the senators was talking about if you have red hair, then you respond differently to anesthesia, and I was like, that may be for you, but not all redheads would have that. So if an anesthesiologist was to just go, oh, this person has red hair, I'm going to dose them up because all redheads respond this way. That's not medicine. That's not medicine. That's like, okay, we're going to have that in the back of our mind. And we're going to be, when we're dosing them, we're going to have that in the back of our mind, but we're not going to treat all redheads the same just because they're redheads. You're going to have it in the back of your mind for sure. Like even with, I worked postpartum forever and redheads tend to bleed more, and so you have that in the back of your mind. Oh, I'm going to be watching for hemorrhaging, but I'm not preemptively going to give, something to stop bleeding just because they're a redhead. Like, and so that's the difference. When she brought that analogy, I was like, that's the difference right there. You don't just treat it just because of what you
You don't put
see.
someone in a box because of what they tick off, right?
Just because of the external, you do have it. You've learned it because you should learn it, and it's always been taught. It's always been taught that way. So really frustrating, because it's happening more and more in medicine. I think medicine is one of the last to kind of be hit by it, but it's happening. And there's actually, I was in Washington, D.C. last week because there's a congressman who's a physician who's running a bill to say, let's stop federal funding of medical schools that are going to base their admissions and their testing and everything on these diversity, equity, inclusion principles, because that is not safe. I don't care what my doctor looks like. I just want to know that they're competent and that they've done the work to get there. I know what it takes. Again, like I said, my husband went to medical school. I know what it takes to go through that. And you have to be committed. You have to be committed. And we have a doctor shortage right now that's kind of frightening. And I think there's a lot of people who are maybe thought they wanted to do it, and then they get in there and then they've taken a spot and then they quit. There's a lot.
I'll tell you honestly, because I can and other people can't. But when we were foster parents, I loved it when we found doctors that matched the kids, because I wanted them to see somebody who looked like them. I wanted to see that representation. Now I question it.
That's the problem, right?
And that is absolutely the problem. Now I'm like, nope. I just want to know that you believe these. You're not going to push me into this. That's all I want to know. But if you are a young doctor, and I'm going to question everything. And that is really sad.
It is really sad because we shouldn't base, now we're starting to base our judgments on competency based on skin color. So what, and gender even. So what good has that done? What good is it doing?
That's intentional. I mean, remember, the goal is to dismantle. The goal is to dismantle. And if you dismantle your healthcare, I mean, that's a big one. Well, anyways, I very much appreciate the clarification. I hope that this answers questions that anyone might have. Again, the bill is called Equal Opportunities Initiatives. There's nothing. For me, the reason that this bill was so important is because I teach. And when I teach these kids and I look at them, especially the boys, I don't want to say, work really hard, do the best that you can right now, but you're not going to have a chance in the future because you happen to be Caucasian. That is not something I was willing to tell these kids. It doesn't have to do with being a Black savior or a white savior. It has to do with the fact that kids have potential and we shouldn't steal that from them.
And it's humanity. It's just humanity, the simple humanity of it, of treating each other. It's the golden rule, right? Treat each other the way you want to be treated.
Yes.
That's it. That's it. Period. And yeah, there are people out there that are horrible, that are mean. And I wish if we could solve racism with legislation, that would be great. But you can't. You can solve it with example and with what you're doing, with just trying to teach people, teach kids goodness and right and to treat each other with respect, no matter what you look like. So anyway, thanks for all you do. I appreciate all you do.
You too. This was a bill that just lifted my soul. So thank you very much. I mean, it was
So
hard.
much.
It was hard to do. I watched. It was hard. So thank you.
It was hard, and it was hard for you guys too. I felt for the backlash that you guys got too. I think it was ridiculous. I'll have to say that there has been equal or actually more that have said thank you, and even if it's quietly, even if they don't feel like they can say it out loud, that they've appreciated this and that they've seen, the issues and that they're happy that something's been done about it. There's been way more of that than there has been of the negative. So I'm choosing to focus on that anyway.
You have a beautiful soul.
Thank you. As do you.
All right. Have a good night.
Hey, thanks, Cari. We'll see you